Hi, my name is Mariam, a 32-year-old woman. This is my story. David, my husband, was once a loving and responsible man. However, he became promiscuous, spent all his money on alcohol, and often did not return home until his money was gone. When he did come back, he had the audacity to ask me for money. One hot afternoon, my friend Amina visited me. She was surprised to see that I had nothing to offer her except water. "Mariam, why do you live like this?" she asked, her eyes filled with concern. "David has a good job, you shouldn't be struggling." I couldn't hold back my tears any longer. I broke down and cried, pouring out all my frustrations and despair. Amina listened patiently and then said, "There is a healer who can help you. She has helped many women in our village. Would you like to see her?" Desperate for a solution, I agreed. The next day we set out early in the morning to visit the healer. The healer's hut was a small, modest structure at the edge of the village. Inside, the air was filled with the scent of herbs and a sense of calm. The healer, an elderly woman dressed in traditional attire, welcomed us warmly. Amina and I sat on a mat, our hearts beating fast. "Tell me, my child, what troubles you?" the healer asked, her voice gentle yet firm. I shared my story. The healer listened attentively, nodding occasionally. When I finished, she took a deep breath and said, "Your husband's spirit is lost. To bring him back, we must call upon the ancestors and the spirits of the land. Bring me a sack of maize tomorrow." The next day, I returned to the healer with a sack full of grain. She performed her ritual with great concentration, chanting and sprinkling herbs around the hut. Finally, she handed me a small, lively chicken. "This chicken represents your husband," she said. "Whenever he starts to not come home, place this chicken outside and lure it back into the house with this grain. Once it comes back inside, give it one grain and your husband will return home." I smiled, looking at the sack of grain. It was a lifetime supply. My problems would be over for good. When I got back home, I did as instructed. I put the chicken outside and called it in, offering it a piece of grain. It pecked at the grain eagerly and ate it up. Before long, David walked through the door. Luckily, it was payday, and he had brought groceries and clothes for the children. You're watching Midnight Shadows. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Now, let's get back to the story. For the next few months, my home was peaceful and happy. Whenever David seemed to wander off his path, I would use the chicken and the grain, and he would come home. It was like a miracle. Our lives improved greatly, and I felt a sense of contentment I hadn't felt in years. David became more responsible, and our relationship flourished. He spent more time with the children, and our home was filled with laughter and love. The healer's wisdom had truly saved our family. As Christmas approached, I decided to celebrate with our family and friends. I invited my extended family and David's as well. The preparations were in full swing, and I was filled with joy and anticipation. The house was decorated beautifully, and the aroma of delicious food filled the air. Everyone arrived, and the house was soon buzzing with conversations and laughter. It was a perfect day. As the celebration intensified, I heard my daughter call out, "Mum, we are out of maize meal." I responded back to her, "Get some of the stored maize and ask your father and your uncles to go to the grinding mill." I hadn't seen my sisters-in-law in ages, and we were in the middle of juicy gossip. I couldn't attend to such matters at that moment. An hour passed. I was mid-laugh when I realized I might have made a grave mistake. I rushed over to where we stored our grain, and my magic sack was gone. Panic set in. I ran as fast as I could to the grinding mill, hoping they were still in the queue and that I wouldn't be too late. As I left home, a voice came from behind again. "Mother, the cooks want to know which chickens." I didn't hear the last part of that question. I was in full sprint. When I arrived, the maize had already been ground to a powder by the time I got there. I wasn't sure what the implications of this would be. Maybe the power would still be contained in the powder, I thought. My husband was nowhere to be found. I needed to get home quickly to give the chicken some of the powder and hopefully bring my husband home. When I got back home, the smell of fried chicken was unmistakable. I placed the maize meal by the kitchen door. "Please, not my chicken!" I screamed as I ran to the chicken coop. My chicken was gone. I ran back to the kitchen and saw the distinct feathers of my chicken in a heap along with others. "It's a good thing you rushed to get the maize meal. The men were taking their sweet time," my sister said with a smile, while thickening the porridge with the magic maize meal. I felt dizzy. The next thing I knew, I woke up surrounded by people. It had been hours. My husband was nowhere to be found. My guests had eaten, and some had already left. Needless to say, that was the last time I saw my husband. The healer said there was nothing she could do. The chicken and the thick porridge had been consumed by many people. Thus my husband would belong to many as well. As I write this, my heart is broken. Was I wrong to want my husband back? Hi, my name is Zara. I was 25 when I lost my baby, and this is my story. I live in an apartment in the city, and I think a cat took my baby. This might sound ridiculous, but please hear me out. I was in a 4-year relationship with a man I thought was the love of my life. As soon as I told him I was pregnant, he was gone from my life. Just like that. A few days later, a black cat started coming to my door. In my culture, this is a bad omen, but the cat was friendly, and I needed some companion, so I started feeding it. Before long, I was seeing the cat every day. Like clockwork, it came at 7 p.m. One day my mother was visiting, the cat came again, my mother chased it away. She said it gave her bad vibes. Well, everything is bad vibes for my superstitious mother. Anyway, the cat kept coming, and I felt it was a guardian angel for my baby. My pregnancy progressed, and I grew more attached to the cat. I named it Shadow. Shadow seemed to understand me in a way no one else did. It was there for me when I felt alone, and I started to feel like it was protecting my baby. One night I was lying in bed, half asleep. I heard a noise from the living room. It was Shadow. I got up and saw it staring at me with its green eyes. It walked toward my bedroom, then stopped and looked back as if to say, "Follow me." I was curious, so I followed. Shadow led me to the window. It jumped onto the sill and looked out into the darkness. I saw a man in the shadows looking straight at me. I squinted my eyes, and he was gone. I turned back to Shadow, but it was gone. I was puzzled, but went back to bed. I didn't know Shadow was watching me while I slept, and maybe, just maybe, I had dreamt up the whole thing. I put this experience behind me and prepared for my delivery that was fast approaching. A few days later, I was standing in my apartment, my baby in hand, and Shadow was there as if to welcome the child. Sometimes I would come into the nursery to find Shadow looking at the baby, its green eyes scanning my little one. I would smile and wish them both a good night. One night I woke up and thought I saw Shadow there, but I guess I was mistaken. I went ahead and checked on my baby, who was sleeping peacefully, maybe too peacefully. When I touched my baby, he was cold to the touch. I panicked, taking my baby to the hospital immediately. There was nothing they could do. I was devastated. That night, Shadow vanished. The apartment felt emptier than ever. Days turned into weeks, and the numbness of my loss was my only companion. Sometimes late at night, I thought I saw Shadow's glowing eyes from across the street, in the window of the apartment opposite mine. The woman who lived there was pregnant. I watched her, a sense of dread growing inside me. One evening, I decided to warn her. Gathering my courage, I knocked on her door. She opened it, her face kind and welcoming. I tried to explain, but the words felt hollow, absurd. She thanked me, but didn't seem convinced. I left, feeling both relieved and foolish. I had to get back to my life, so I put everything behind me. A few months later, there was a tearful woman at my door. My neighbor from across the street. She had lost her baby. She wanted to find out more about the cat. She wanted details. She had not seen the cat since she lost her baby. Then the support group started. We found other women with similar stories. The cat was harvesting the souls of the children. We have no idea what the next step should be. All we can do is warn others who are pregnant. But for the most part, they do not believe us until it's too late. And that, my dear listeners, concludes today's story. If you have any advice for our guest, please share it in the comments section below. If you have a similar story you'd like to share, you can send it to us at the email on your screen. Until next time, beware of the shadows that linger in the night.